So welcome back. I hope you had a good lunch. I think most people are back in their seats or on their way. Now the satisfaction conference survey I was talking about before lunch, now it is on the table, on the red table on the side here, and please go and get one before you leave and fill it in, and then you can just leave it on the table. I also want to say, some people wondered, how can we get access to what has been said and discussed, and all the documents and the presentations from this conference, these 2 days, will be given to you through a Dropbox. So you will get all the information and all the presentations. Now we have session number 8, Apprenticeship Innovations from the Global South. And I'm happy to invite the moderator, Ashwani Aggarwal, Senior Skills and Employability Specialist at ILO, and I'll give you my microphone and you promise to give it back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Hi. Those are back, good afternoon. And welcome back. You are the most sincerest people. This is the last part of the conference. And if you are still here, that shows you are determined to make a change when you go back to your countries in the apprenticeship systems of your country. So big applause to all of you. And also you can see how sincere our panelists are there. They are already waiting before you came on their seats. So please give a big applause for them. Okay, this session is about innovations in Global South. How many of you are from the countries belonging to Global South? Can you raise your hands? Please raise big so that it is more visible. Okay, a few of them are there. So you are from South Africa, India. Which other countries are there? Global South? Any other country? Australia. Okay, Australia could be also a developed country, so it may not be exactly part of Global South. Global South is also more countries who are developing countries, of course in the southern region. Okay, now another question just to you. Now you are all from very different range of countries. How many of you think that your country has a well-established apprenticeship system, well-functioning apprenticeship system, and that a majority of young persons join this one? Please raise your hands. Okay, okay. Last one is Swiss. Swiss is okay. You are from Austria. Swiss, Austria is usual. I'm surprised. South Africa. Okay, very good. So I think you will be having, there is one seat left also, because you are also from the Global South. So you can share some of the innovations, what made your system well established and well functioning. So you can, I will also invite you either here or there. And also what we'll do, this panel, in this panel, you are all part of the extended panel. So if you also have to contribute something, please feel free, but make the intervention short. Not a short statement, 1 line, 2 line statement, but not a long thesis here, or long speech here. With this one, I'll go back. The format which we are going to use here, no presentations. I think you had enough of them. Each of the panelists will briefly mention what are the key innovations that has made their country system very successful. Or the country system, not naturally the necessity that country means their country of origin or from where they're citizen, but basically also the country where they have worked extensively. So with this one initial introduction, I introduce the first panelist here. He is Dr. Yahya Msigwa, if I'm pronouncing correctly. He is the Secretary General of Trade Union Congress of Tanzania, which is an umbrella organization of trade union movement in Tanzania. He has 20 years of experience in trade union leadership under different capacities, and most surprisingly, he is a qualified medical doctor who practiced medicine for 27 years before rising to top leadership of trade union leadership. So over to you, sir. And my first question to you is, when apprenticeship system started in your country, and how many apprentices are now admitted every year?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. Apprenticeship started in 2014 in our country, and currently we are taking roughly 350 to 500 apprentices per year. And we have more than 50 centers benefiting from this. We started with hotels. And what really made this successful in our countries, one is demand from social partners. To establish apprenticeship, you have to have the social partners' interest in this. So in our country, the hotel managers and owners were among the people who were interested with this apprenticeship. And the other is the private sector leadership. The leaders themselves were interested with apprenticeship. And the other thing is accreditation of the program. People, when they go to study and the lesson that they learn at the end is not accredited and well recognized, they find it as useless. So we have accredited. That is when they graduate with level number 5, which closer to diploma, which is level number 6. So it's recognized throughout the country. But the fourth reason as to why it has been innovative in our country is involvement of the partners, the social partners, the tripartite. You talk of the government through ministry responsible for labor, you talk of the employers, and you talk of the workers. Me, as a Trade Union Congress General Secretary, I'm involved full in this activity. But you talk of tripartite plus, the ILO, the National College of Tourism in our country, the Tourism Confederation of Tanzania, the Vocational Education and Technical Authority, the UNIDO, you talk of Hotel Authority of Tanzania. So all those are involvement of stakeholders. But the other reason is age selective. We come to realize that 17 years to 27 years is the best age to recruit as an apprenticee. If you recruit below that, you are recruiting people who are not concerned with this activity. But if you recruit older age, they don't tie very much with apprenticeship. The other thing is presence of apprenticeship secretariat and committee. If you happen in your country to have a special committee, it will be good to follow up what is happening, and it is more involving. And these secretariat and committees involve the tripartite plus. So you have the government, you have the employers, and you have the trade union involved. And you have centers like the ILO. I remember the one who is moderating, Mr. Ashwani, have been very helpful to us. He stayed in Tanzania until we almost thought he is a Tanzanian, to assist us in making, I have one here, the apprenticeship program and curriculum and policy. So in making this, when you have a special policy, when you have a special curriculum, you follow up these curriculum and the policies. And the other thing is a good selection of the field to follow. In Tanzania, for instance, we started with hospitality, that is hotels. This was simple to follow, but as my Secretary General of the Ministry responsible for labor yesterday said, the other thing is manufacturing industry. And the other thing is construction and infrastructure. So those are the best field where it is easier to follow. But the other thing is quality assurance. If you keep on introducing something and you don't follow the standards, sometimes somewhere you end up not in failure. So we have to follow the assurance and defining the roles. So the owner of the hotel have got their own role, the government, the policy makers, the apprentices themselves, the trade union, even the business, that the owners of those hotels. So those are the few things that makes apprenticeship an innovative in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Now what we'll do this one, there are some other colleagues from Tanzania also. For example, we have Permanent Secretary from the Prime Minister's office. In case they like to add another point, which they think is very important from their country, they can add now or they can add later. This is true for the other representatives also. So just keep in mind, you can intervene any other point of time also. Another thing is that when we are talking about Global South, why we kept this session? Why we kept the focus on the Global South? The large majority of the countries in the world are belong to this category. And there are many problems in those things. For example, she said well-functioning system in Swiss. Yes, apprenticeship system, but in Swiss, every system works very well. Even if you, drive over speed, you get the ticket also. And once someone told me, someone was driving with the girlfriend, and the photograph came with someone with the driving together, and the wife saw that one, and that person was divorced also. So there are so many well-functioning systems are there. But if you go to Global South country, you are speeding, someone stops you, traffic police, you can give $10 or something, you can escape also. There are many other things are there. So similarly, making a system, apprenticeship system functioning in those conditions are very important. Otherwise, you will think these are someone from Swiss or Austria will think, whatever doctor has explained, these are the basic fundamental issues of a good apprenticeship system. But the point is that how to make those happen and function well in a developing country. That's the biggest challenge. That itself is innovation. What he has explained is the key success factors. But for each of them, there were a lot of innovations required. For example, most countries are talking about the level 1 or 2 qualification. How come they started with level 5 qualification? It itself is innovation. How people were attracted to join this program was an innovation. But I will not come to at this stage. We'll come to later on this stage. Maybe you will have many questions. So just think of those questions. Please note down. And I will now go to the next speaker. Now you'll feel very strange. I'm sure many of you know him, Michael Axmann. He was leading the ILO program before I came to Geneva. He was leading the ILO program on apprenticeship here. And now he's a senior specialist in ILO CINTEFOR, and he's managing the ILO program on apprenticeship in whole of Latin American and Caribbean countries, covering around 29 countries. Now you will surprise that he's a German. But how come he's sitting here and talking about the Global South? Because he's going to speak about what innovations have been done in one of the countries in Latin America, Dominican Republic. Over to you, Michael.
Good afternoon to all of you, and it's a pleasure to be back in Geneva. I say back because I used to work here in Geneva until November 2016, and since then I'm at ILO CINTEFOR in Montevideo, Uruguay, as Ashwani said, working with Latin American and Caribbean countries. And yesterday when I came back, one of the first people I ran into was Helmut Zellot from ETF, who is sitting there in the back. Helmut, raise your hand. And Helmut asked me, what the heck are you doing in CINTEFOR now? What's CINTEFOR doing? So what I said yesterday to Helmut in the 3 minutes is what I'm saying now about CINTEFOR in my 3 minutes that I have here on the podium in my first question. So basically we are a network of vocational training institutions in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have 29 countries that we work in, and we have 70 partners, 70 training institutions. We work with employers. We work also with trade unions in the respective countries. And we work on everything that's related to vocational education and training. We have currently 19 people in CINTEFOR, which is, I think, more than you have here in Geneva, three of us. And we work on a number of different issues. And the thing that I'm working on is the quality apprenticeship agenda. And this is something that is of utmost importance, I would say, in Latin America right now. Many countries are coming to us and asking us for advice. So we basically do 3 different things. We do research, we write books, practical applications of apprenticeships. We do workshops, we work with specific countries, we work on apprenticeship applications, and we also do technical cooperation activities together with donors. So when it comes to innovations in apprenticeships, I would say that just to give you a little bit of the flavor of what we are doing is, for example, we work on apprenticeship country revisions, as I just did recently in Belize. We advise the government of Costa Rica on the new legislation for apprenticeship, and it's basically what you just said. It's involving all the social partners. It's not only something that needs to come from the government alone, but you have to have the employers and the government and the trade unions on board, of course, as well. We work in the Dominican Republic, and I will talk a little bit more about that later, basically together with the public training provider, Infotep. We work with the IADB there, with the Inter-American Development Bank on apprenticeship reform agenda for the Dominican Republic. We work in Uruguay right now on basically carving social dialogue, getting the constituents ready to work on apprenticeships. And that's a very challenging task. You know, it sounds so nice when you say it's in our first building block, social dialogue, but actually doing social dialogue, implementing it in the day-to-day business is a big challenge, and that's what we are facing right now in Uruguay. We also work in Argentina, we work in Bolivia right now, we work in Jamaica, we work in Panama, Costa Rica, and Mexico on apprenticeships. And in the next question, I think I will talk a little bit more about what we will be doing in the Dominican Republic, exactly. Thank you very much for the first round. I think the interesting thing in the Dominican Republic, we're all interested about numbers always. It comes down to the numbers, and I think this is a guiding question that we have here. How many people are actually doing apprenticeships? And when I look at the countries in Latin America, we usually have this rule of thumb, this 1%. And the 1% means that out of the TVET students in the country, we have 1% that are taking apprenticeships. That is the rule of thumb for many countries, including a country like Dominican Republic, which is a country of 10 million people. It's a low middle income country by now. Workforce is about 4 million people, and 600 out of those are taking apprenticeships. So it is something that is relatively well established with employers, but the issues we're having there in the Dominican Republic is basically getting to bigger numbers, getting the employers to participate in it, and also identifying sectors with growth and job potential where the employers are part of it. So we keep saying that the employers should be in the driving seat when it comes to apprenticeship design. And that's something that we see very often not happening right now in Latin America, because it's very often the public training providers that steer the programs and, I wouldn't say scare away the employers, but not really make them part of apprenticeship design, which I think is very important to get them on board. So what we have done in the Dominican Republic is basically we have looked at incentivizing the employer's participation in the apprenticeship design. And what we heard, any interesting stories there. For example, in the IT sector, when I talked to the employers there, we have 10,000 jobs. We have 10,000 jobs in the IT sector. We would be very much interested in doing apprenticeships. And I said, well, why don't you get the graduates that come from the university system? And the employers there said, well, they have two left hands, these people. They don't know what we are talking about. We would like to train the 10,000 people that we need in the IT sector, in addition to the tourism sector, which is also a booming sector in the Dominican Republic. And the problem is really that there is not this direct cooperation between the employers in those sectors with growth and job potential and the public training provider. So basically what we're trying to do is finding incentive systems to get the employers much more involved in the Dominican Republic, and that does not only go for the Dominican Republic itself, but it basically goes for all the countries that we are working in Latin America. And that is also Central America and South America, of course. Maybe that is some of the issues here in the first round, and I've been speaking too much already, I notice. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now, before we go to the next presenter, any burning question from first of one to presenter? Any other person also? Please, okay, please go ahead.
What is the organizational structure of your network? Does it really work as a network, or it's just by name a network? What I mean is that, is there effectiveness so that every member of the network is interacting? Please.
Thank you for your question. I think it's a good one. When we talk about networks, sometimes we have this lip service, you know, we say, well, we have a network. But we have a real network, meaning that we participate in meetings with them. They invite us, and we have what we call a RCT, a regional meeting every other year, where all the members come together. We had that in August last year in Costa Rica, where we had 200 people much more than we have here in this session, where we talked about apprenticeships and the issues that we have in the specific countries. We have a website, CINTEFOR website, where people can come and visit. And of course, the idea is that we help to give them advice on specific issues. And that's not only apprenticeships. We're also talking national qualification frameworks. We're talking vocational teacher training. So I would say we have a very active network that is basically asking for services. They come to us and ask for services. So whenever I go out and swarm on my missions to the different countries, it's based on requests that come either from the government or from the employers or from the trade unions. So we have been in place for 53 years and we're still alive. So I think there must be something good in it that we are still there.
Thank you very much. Now, go to the next speaker, Mr. Shafiuzzaman. Is correct spelling? Okay. Okay. Can you loudly speak so that people have your correct pronunciation?
No, thank you very much.
No, I'll introduce to you, but speak your name.
My name is S.M. Shafiuzzaman.
Thank you.
S.M. Shafiuzzaman.
He is the owner of a pharmaceutical industry there, and he is the chairperson of Industry Skills Council for Pharmaceutical in Bangladesh. He is also the General Secretary of Bangladesh Association of Pharmaceutical Industries. First of all,
I have one more credential.
Sorry?
I myself is also Director FBCCI.
Thank you.
The highest body of the businessman, FBCCI Federation of Timber and Commerce and Industry. I myself is a director also.
Thank you very much. He needs a big round of applause. Reason is that he is not well. Yes, since yesterday he is not well. Despite that, he has still volunteered that he will continue and perform his function as a panelist here. So please give a big round of applause to motivate him. Thank you. So I have two questions to you. First question is, when apprenticeship system in Bangladesh was established or reformed, how many apprentices are admitted every year, and what would you consider the key success factors for the success of apprenticeship in your country?
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum. I'm very happy today. Yesterday I was thinking I may not come tomorrow because I was a little bit sick, having temperature and a little bit cough also. So I thank you, Almighty Allah. He has given chance to speak in front of you. Before main business, I will take 2-3 minutes time. That is, Bangladesh is a very small country, and Bangladesh is having highly populated country. We have 170 million people with a very small territory. But if you talk about success story of Bangladesh, we have a lot of success story. If you talk about my sector is number one, pharmaceutical sector. Presently, we are meeting our demand, local demand, 98-99%. And presently, we are exporting our pharmaceutical product 152 countries of the world. It is a huge. And when I know what is ILO, I know a lot of things. Also, 2-3 years before, one gentleman from ILO wants to talk to me. This gentleman was, I think, Sri Lanka, Colombo. Then he met me and he proposed me, he want to go for your activities with pharmaceutical. I thought that this is nothing. But I am very happy to say, once again I come here to thank you, ILO. With ILO, we have organized beautiful training program. And pharmaceutical, is a highly difficult industry. If you talk about the labor is also educated. If somebody is not SSC, then we cannot take him as a labor. And we have a lot of technical things also. But if somebody is not educated, well educated, he cannot function in the factory. With ILO, we sit with ILO. And another important thing, Honorable Prime Minister also looking after all sector, every day he is looking after. Sometimes she speaks to us, what we are doing, what you need to, some more, blah, blah. So then we are very happy with ILO and with permission or advice from ILO, we have established a Center of Excellence and we have organized every month there will be 2, 3, minimum 2 sessions will be there. We have purchased a lot of machineries also from our own, and you will not believe, from our industry, those who are working, they are also coming here, they are also taking training, they are very happy and they are very high about the think that yes, once pharma we are doing very good, so country will be very good, we will be also benefited. And it is very, very important, if you talk about the pharma industry, we don't have any labor problem. Because normally pharmaceutical, we pay higher salary. So people is also very happy. So our sector is absolutely fine and they are not, I'm talking about the manpower, those who are working in the pharma industry, everybody is very happy and everybody is on to cooperate our industry. So then presentation is, and another few thing also come up, pharmaceutical, other than, I think pharmaceutical is number one. Furniture industry is also going very up. They have started export. And some other sector where you have started giving funding, giving idea, they are also slowly they are coming up. So I think the ILO, Susan, 5-6 sector, I believe, yes, 5-6 sector will do very good, followed by pharmaceutical industry. Thank you very much. And if you have some more question, I'm here. And another in our delegation, another gentleman has come. He is from Honorable Prime Minister Office. He is also having a lot of information. Only I have 100% information in pharma industry. Other I can, somewhere I can get 25, 30, 50, but not 100. So I think the gentleman is here. If I cannot, I think he can help me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I'll not take the questions now. I'll go to the next panelist, and then please keep your questions ready. Next panelist is Mr. Jayant Krishna. He is the Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer of the National Skills Development Corporation in India. And he has held various leadership positions in India's largest big business groups, the Tata Group, in various leadership positions. He has also championed apprenticeship reforms in India from the industry side and worked closely with government, leading to amendments in the Indian Apprenticeship Act. If you recall, in the opening session, the secretary from the India, he mentioned that in India, the Apprenticeship Act was formed in 1961, but was reformed in 2014. So we will request, we are very privileged that he is here, and can you just kindly explain some of the key innovations which are part of these reforms? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Aggarwal. Actually, if you look at the total number of apprentices in India today, we have less than 300,000 apprentices, which is less than 0.1% of the workforce that India as a country has. Compare and contrast this number with that of Germany, where 5% of the workforce comes through the apprenticeship route. Even in China, about 2.5%. Switzerland, it's close to 5%, and hugely. So this initiative has been was quite a non-starter in the country. Very little, traction it had with the industry. So I think the entire process of reform started in the year 2011, which got completed in the process in the year 2014, and it was a very simple route. Talk to the industry, find out what their pain areas are with the existing act, and make a wish list, a complete laundry list of what kind of changes they want, what old stipulations in the law they want to be discontinued, and what new things that they want. So that's what we did, and of course, at that point of time I was working in the industry, and it was good that after a series of negotiations and discussions and deliberations with the government, almost 95% of the wish list that the industry had was accepted by the government. Some of the key reforms, call them innovation or whatever whatever it is, but which I would like to discuss with you. Earlier, the kind of regime we had, a government officer had to go to every unit which had industrial production and look at how many machines they have, how many of those machines are required for actual manufacturing, and what is the capacity one can spare for apprentices, and then look at the manpower, and then finally decide that this unit, industrial unit, can have as many apprenticeship positions for electrician, as many for plumbers, as many for CNC machine operators, and so on and so forth. It was a very prescriptive and control-centric regime. So this has completely been disbanded now, and now it's a very, very simple formula that 2.5% of the manpower strength that the company has, that should be as many apprentices you must have at any point of time. And some people do say that too many apprentices in any industrial organization may also lead to excesses, and industry may like to misuse them as cheap labor. So therefore, a higher cap of 10% of the overall manpower was also kept. So anywhere between 2.5% of the manpower strength to 10% being maximum, this was done. The kind of curriculum that the government used to have, they still have 259 of them, the designated trades. Newer technologies come, the business landscape changes, and very often you need changes in the job roles and curriculum. But in the government scheme of things, it used to take longer to react to those changes, and finally the journey to complete the changes sometimes used to run into a couple of years, and in many technology areas, especially in IT kind of an area, the entire technology itself changes in that kind of time. So the government has given the complete ownership to the industry with the logic that if industry is matured enough to add to the GDP of the country, it should be trusted to develop, to decide their own job roles and design their own curriculum. So I think this was a major change we started. Apprenticeship in our country was largely confined to the manufacturing sector and industrial training organizations which used to run a 2-year program after class 10. Now it has been extended to all kinds of service organizations because there are more people employed in the service sector in India than in the manufacturing sector. And also there are more people employed in the MSME sector than the large sector. So the entire boundary of apprenticeship program has been extended to cover MSME units also. And also there's short-term programs of 3 to 6 month duration. They can also have pathways for apprenticeship available now. Earlier, industry used to say that there are a lot of cumbersome procedures to engage with the government and so on and so forth. It has been completely done away with. It's an automated, portalized electronic interface. In the entire journey of engaging an apprentice, a company need not interface with government at all, except on the portal at all. There's no human face-to-face meeting required. Because a lot of people used to feel that working with the government would also comes with strings attached and a lot of social overheads that the organization has to pay the price for. So that has been completely done away with. You do everything electronically, including the contract between the establishment and the employee happens electronically. Some companies used to say that while we have machines and we can provide practical training under the Apprenticeship Act, but how about the theoretical basic training? We don't have a classroom, we don't have those kind of trainers. So this basic training component can now be outsourced. This was another reform which was carried out, and some of the small and medium-sized industries used to say that apprenticeship requires n number of machines and not one unit may have all the machines on the shop floor. So it was allowed that the practical training under apprenticeship can also be done spread over 3 smaller manufacturing or service sector units for that matter. Stipend used to be very, very less. The money that used to be paid to the apprentices, and it has been completely done away with. Now it is linked to, as Secretary had also said in the opening session, that it is linked to the minimum wages. Minimum wage in India is a state-regulated subject, and 70% of the minimum wage is what you have to pay to the apprentice in year 1. And if it's a longer program, then 80% in year 2 and 90% in year 3. So these kind of reforms have happened. There are no returns to be submitted now. All that has been completely done away with. And there used to be differential rules for leave, for holidays, various other allowances for apprentices. So vis-a-vis the employees. So all that has been done away with. The same rules apply to apprentices as they apply to the normal units. Another major change which was made that these optional trades, industry was given a complete freedom to design their own curriculum, as I told you, and this part of the apprenticeship portfolio moved to a public-private partnership that I represent, which is the National Skill Development Corporation, which is technically a private sector company with only 49% equity from Government of India and with 51% equity in 10 different industry associations. So it was a usage of public money, which was entrusted to a private sector company so that they have a better interface with the industry. And this portfolio has shifted to NSDC along with different sector skill councils that we have in the country. And sector skill councils have been given the statutory powers to be the apprenticeship advisor under the Apprenticeship Act. Perhaps for the first time, a private sector entity, an industry entity has been given a quasi-government power under the law. So I think these changes have happened. Government has said, we can even bear the cost of basic training. We can reimburse to you. We can reimburse 25% of the stipend paid to the apprentices every month to the industry, whosoever wants to support. Because especially in the medium and small scale sector, companies were a bit wary of that, if we pay this kind of a stipend, will it make our business case fly? So I think that promotion is also available. And so there is a complete business case now for the industry to, come forward and, take it up. And the way we engage with the industry, we tell them it's a short, it's a very high return on investment with a short payback period. If you do apprenticeship, because apprentices start contributing to productivity from quite early in the entire cycle, and also they are better prepared to work, to multitask and work across this thing. So these kind of changes have happened, and a complete single window concept has been promised. I'll take half a minute more, Ashwani. We still have challenges. Not everything is hunky-dory. A lot of reforms have happened.
What I will request you, I'm sure there will be a lot of questions.
Right.
Then you can respond back.
All right. So I end there.
But thank you.
All right.
There are a lot of reforms which you have done. So I'm sure there will be many, many questions from the participants. But before we go to the last presenter, I will request our colleagues from South Africa, because they also have very well established functioning system and they're from Global South. Will you like to say at least one innovations or one key success factor which is the result of, which has resulted in such a good system in your country? Please, ma'am.
Thank you. I think what's made our Centres of Specialisation, which is a flagship innovation project for apprenticeships, is because we run with the slogan which says, make every workplace a training space. And I think that's led to the success, together with all the stakeholders, including the youth, targeting them. In South Africa, it's the decade of the artisan. So this project is taking 30 apprentices per TVET college. And as I mentioned earlier this morning, we've got 13 trades. So in total, that'll be 780 apprentices going into the system. We're trying through the project to create a skilled and capable workforce to support inclusive economic growth. But like I said this morning, it's not the only point. And I think if we have an increased delivery of qualified artisans and the capacity of the TVETs is improved, we can make great strides in South Africa.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, please keep your questions ready. I'll go to the last presenter, Ms. Christine Hofmann. She's here she has a very extensive experience in working in the informal apprenticeship issues. And for the global South countries, because many of those have up to 90% of the economy is the informal economy, they have large number of informal apprenticeships. She is going to explain what is informal apprenticeship, why it is important for the countries to government to invest in those one, and what are some innovations, particularly in the reference, she will give example from BANA, that what innovations they have carried to upgrade informal apprenticeship. Over to you. But before that, I have to introduce you for completely. She's also worked as she started, I think, in the ILO Geneva also. She worked and developed a resource guide on informal apprenticeship for Africa. And then she worked in North Africa, covering all the countries in North Africa as a ILO senior specialist on the skills development. And now she is back in the Geneva, in the skills branch, and looking after various issues, specifically on the social inclusion. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Ashwani. Thanks for the nice intro, and big pleasure to be here and be able to talk about one of my absolute favorite topics, informal apprenticeship. What is informal apprenticeship? It's apprenticeship. But while in formal apprenticeship, you have formal rules that are enforced by formal institutions, in informal apprenticeship, you have informal rules that are enforced informally through social networks, through clans, local association and networks, and you have social norms and traditions that rule the system. Apprenticeship in the informal economy is not the same as informal learning that happens in some small workshops. Because in informal apprenticeship, you have a clear agreement between usually master craftsperson and an apprentice. And that's very important to understand. I mean, we've all talked a lot about the history of apprenticeship, that this system to transmit skills from one generation to another is still there. It is not benefiting from any public support, but it runs on its own. Because we would like to focus on numbers here, depending on different estimations and different studies, in countries in Africa, we could say that depending on the country, there are 10 to 50 times more people learning in informal apprenticeship than in the formal training system. And you might have between 20 and 50% of young people in the informal economy that are apprentices. So we are talking of huge numbers, and that alone, you could say, is an argument for the government to get involved, because this is where skills development happens. But there are other reasons. From an ILO point of view, I mean, we would clearly say, well, there are also decent work deficits in informal apprenticeship. We see child labor, we see exploitation, we see that some trainers, craftspeople, might keep the skills to themselves so that the learner stays longer. Now you could say, well, apprentices could leave, you know, if they don't like it. So we've also looked in studies at dropout rates. And indeed, in some of the countries we've looked at, let me quote Malawi, Tunisia, Egypt, dropout rates are between 30, 40, sometimes 50%. Yet there are also other countries, in particular in West Africa, where traditions are still pretty embedded in the local economy. You'd have dropout rates of 20%, and they equal dropout in an apprenticeship system like in Germany. So this to say, the informal institutions are very strong. But there are other issues. It's low tech. Right? People don't receive recognized qualifications. So they might not be able to transition into formality. And that's something that the ILO is very adamant about. People who work in the informal economy should be supported to transition to formality. And to give you a last argument, if informal apprenticeship is upgraded, that's the term we use, it can dynamize economies because it's a great way of instilling skills into economies, to linking small workshops to more modern ways of production, into supply chains, etc. So why have I picked the country example of Benin? I think it's a great example because it is one of the, I would say, most sustainable models of upgrading informal apprenticeship that I know. So the country has introduced 2 new certificates that aim at upgrading informal, some call it traditional, apprenticeship. And they follow 2 different approaches or ideas. One, called CQP, is following the dual approach. So some of the workshops have been turned into training providers. So some mastercrafts people provide the theory, the off-the-job training, and then so there's a proper dual system, 3 years, and some entry requirements. This system is supported through the National Training Fund. And the National Training Fund mainly sponsors the upgrading of the skills of the mastercrafts person and funds the off-the-job. Now, the other certificate, called CQM, is one that links, that basically only looks at the assessment. So it establishes standards for end of apprenticeship assessments. Yet, and that's the very important part, it has not been established top down, but what preceded it was a mechanism at local level where crafts associations that organize. Okay, sorry, I'm talking too long. This last point. So it's local crafts associations that have organized these assessments and thereby bringing different craftspeople together who agree on a standard. The next level was that they organized assessments together with the local municipality. So you got government involved, and it was a lot of publicity around the assessments. So there was the social recognition attached to it. And then, as a third step, the government at central level came in to introduce more formal competency standards for these occupations. And by now, CQMs are delivered in all regions. So there are around 10,000 apprentices per year. In the CQP, we have about, I think it's even 20,000, I'm sorry, just to give you the right numbers. And in the CQP, we have 2,000 to 3,000 per year. So one of the issues in upgrading this informal system is that you very easily reach a level where you can't afford upgrading anymore. So numbers in all countries where we are seeing these systems have remained very small. So in order to upscale, you need a system like the CQM. Rest there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I think I'll just, are you ready with your questions? No, not yet? No, because we are going to close this session in 10 minutes. So in the meantime, since you are not ready, I'll give one more opportunity to Michael and Doctor. Just say 1 or 2 points about the key success factors in the country, Dominican Republic and Tanzania. First to Michael.
I remember when Moin Chakun spoke yesterday, he said at the beginning of his presentation there are 3 takeaway points. And I give you 2 takeaway points at the end of this panel discussion from my side. The first one is you should look at quality apprenticeships as a high-performance vehicle in which the employers are driving the vehicle and the public training providers are the co-pilots in charge of the GPS, and the trade unions are in the back seat of the same high-performance car. That's what social dialogue is all about. It's bringing them together, but making sure that the roles are also clear, who is doing what and why. And the second thing you should take away from this is something we have not talked about. Our Director General calls quality apprenticeships the gold standard in vocational education and training, and I like that. I really like that. Before my ILO career, I was a director of a vocational school in Germany. I had 1,500 students. 40% of the 1,500 were in apprenticeships, in 16 different apprenticeships, from agriculture to services to manufacturing. Everything was there, but only 40%, in other words, 600. The other ones were in what I would call pre-apprenticeship programs, getting people ready for apprenticeships. It's the cocooning of the quality apprenticeships that I'm talking about. It's what do you have before? We have the same discussions in Brazil right now, where we're also talking about quality apprenticeships and how to design them. And the problem is that the youth are just not there anymore, because they're dropping out of school at the age of 14, 15, 16, and they don't even get to the quality apprenticeship life cycle anymore, because there are no offers. There is not enough there for them to be getting ready for quality apprenticeships. This is a strength of the Swiss system, and I dare say also of the German system. In my school that I was heading, we had 1-year programs, 2-year programs, 3-year programs, getting people ready for apprenticeships. And they would not start before they were 18, usually. And then employers were ready to get into the contractual agreements in those sectors with growth and job potential. I'm not saying we need to copy anything from Switzerland or from Germany or from Austria to any country in the global south. I'm just saying we need to get the dialogue right and we need to get the processes right. And that's really where we can work on a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Now over to Doctor.
Thank you very much, Moderator. In the first instance, I would talk the advantage of apprenticeship, the harmonious working condition. We came to realize that by strengthening trust between tripartite and tripartite plus groups, and through social dialogue, we increase the chances of apprenticeship. And we as trade unionists is quite a good point of entry into trade union. That's one. And two, by merely being practical based, it reduces school to work transition. That is two. And three is sharing of the cost. You could imagine nowadays education is very expensive. In apprenticeship, you find that groups are sharing costs. The government is sharing, the donors are sharing, the apprenticee himself or herself is sharing the cost, even the relative of the apprenticeship. Last but not least, in Tanzania, the drop rate of those apprentices is very low. So of 100 who are enrolled, more than 90 to 90% graduates. Why? Because it is involving and the dialogue are very strong. Thank you.
Now, floor is open for any questions to the panelists. Yeah. Okay, first, and then Paul.
Hello.
Please introduce yourself and also mention panel the question.
Hello. I'm Lalit from Habitat Genome Primary Producer Company from India. So it's not a question, I have a query to Jayant sir and Michael sir. So my query is like that suppose some bachelors or some master degree students have got some chance to have apprenticeship or internship in a set of environment which is not available to most of the other students, like higher end kind of things like working on data sets with NASA and ISRO kind of things or German aerospace centers. So there they work on high dimensional data sets and the data may be classified or some restricted domain, but the skills they earn from that training program. So if they want to translate those kind of the learnings to other institutions, the research or academic institutions. So is there any national institution or international organization where we can enroll or we can register that we are available to give them that kind of training as a volunteer? So because it is not feasible for most of the students to get into that kind of environment and get the chance to work on that kind of data. So it's like that. So that because after getting the training from there, we get the job, but our domain is restricted to do a specific kind of things. But if we can translate those kind of things, that can be benefit to the institutional and the mass level. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ashwani. I had a question for Giant and the new arrangements for third-party kind of aggregators as intermediary bodies in India. And if you could just explain who actually are these organisations? Is the role being undertaken by the industry skills councils or the industry associations or separate entities that have actually been set up by the government and funded for that purpose? Thanks.
Any other question? Can we go to the last row, please? Yeah.
Hello. This is just a quick question for Christine. I was wondering if there was information on the model that you were talking about on the website, some ILO website somewhere.
Yeah, please.
Just in terms of underlying the point was raised in order to get the dialogue right, and the communication group in precedent session, which was emphasizing on the need for data-based, evidence-based dialogue in order to upgrade understanding of at the level of policy making, managers, and down to the employers and workers. Then this is what I am requiring, asking. We could have been much more upgrading the understanding, common understanding of the group at the level of international ILO. And when we go down to the countries, imagine these thematical concepts should be understood at the same level. And if it is demonstrated by, visualized by data, we are living at the digital era, then certainly it can be more effective in order to transmit the message. Because we start with social dialogue, and social dialogue in order to involve, in order to make understanding, then there is need of visualizing data-based information. Thank you very much.
Question directed to a particular panelist or anyone?
Yes, it is confirming what was said by the candidate from Singapore.
Okay.
It's underlying what he was requiring. Thank you.
Thanks. That was an easy one. Yes. So if you go on the ILO Skills website, under programs, there's a section on upgrading informal apprenticeship. You find country studies. You find this guide that Ashwani has mentioned on upgrading informal apprenticeship. It's a resource guide for Africa, but the findings are really also relevant for informal apprenticeship in other regions. There's a guide as well on skills assessments. There is a publication by INAP, the network that was mentioned earlier, with a number of country cases. It's the 2013 or 14 book, 13 I think. And there'll be a new document we're working on, sort of on lessons learned from upgrading. So there you'll find a number of country cases as well later this year or early next year. And I think the presentations will be made available on the website, right? All the presentations that were not given. So you find a one slide on on the Benin case in mind as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Jayant, can you please answer?
Yeah, I think the gentleman, I forgot your name. Lalit, what you had mentioned about some work on data sets, suppose you want a apprenticeship opportunity in NASA, these kind of things you said. So first of all, if your question is India-centric, right now the apprenticeship opportunity that we're providing in the country is for apprentices from India to work at industrial units in India itself. It's not for outside the country. But suppose, what happens? So we have a simple system. If there was somebody in aerospace or whatever it is in India, and they are free to go to the portal, register themselves, and tell them that what all trades they can provide apprenticeship training opportunities for, and candidates can go and apply for specific trades and specific organizations on that. There is no guarantee that it will happen, but some kind of a matchmaking the portal does. It is still at the early stages of implementation, but that's going to happen within the country. Aspirations of a apprentice, and what are the opportunities available in the marketplace. There's some kind of a matchmaking. That's what we are planning to do, and but not outside of country. Paul, your second question was about these third-party aggregators. So generally, we have about 15 third-party aggregators right now. Generally, they are training providers. We have also extended olive branch to industry associations to take up this role. But where we have failed so far as a country is we have not been able to work out a business model for third-party aggregators. Otherwise, why would anybody come? Nobody is a saint. So there has to be a business model that we are working out. So right now, what's happening? People who have some commercial interest in the apprenticeship value chain, they are the only people who have applied to become the third-party aggregators. But I'm sure in due course of time we'll address that. How do we incentivize them?
Thank you, Jen. Now over to Michael, please.
Well, there was not a question directly to me, but there were a couple of comments, and I would like to comment on the comments. The first one is yours, and I think it's a very important one. It's this finding an evidence-based system of checking dialogue and seeing what comes out at the end of the day, what's the impact. So I would suggest to work very strongly with tracer studies there and see actually what is the transition from apprenticeships to the world of work. And I think this is something that was probably in many countries the music of the future. First you have to set up the programs, but then you have to monitor them and see. And I think we'll probably be able to show very high transition rates there. And the second thing for the employers is an important one, and that's the impact on productivity and competitiveness. We in Latin America have this issue of relatively high growth rates in many countries, but the productivity is stagnant. There's nothing happening there. And the competitiveness is also not moving. So my assumption would be that if we work more with apprenticeships, with quality apprenticeships, we could also show some evidence there. The second thing on Lalis, if I heard you right, it also goes in the direction of something like a combination of apprenticeships and university studies. And I think this is one thing that we should also keep in mind and take away from here, is that apprenticeships can be done in very many different ways. There's no one fits all, even when it comes to quality apprenticeships. They can be different. We discussed, for example, when I worked in Latvia and Portugal there in the previous years, the possibility of what I call dual studies, which is a combination of a bachelor degree with a quality apprenticeship. And that is very attractive to many youth. It's very attractive to parents. It's very attractive also in countries that have a high tradition of university degrees. So the idea of combining practical work in quality apprenticeships with a bachelor degree and then thinking about the recognition of that kind of learning is very interesting. In Latvia, for example, we were talking about recognizing a 4-year program towards university degrees. So the sky is the limit for the quality apprenticeship discussion, also when it comes to combining it with new models that may be outside the box for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I think now we are just left with 1 minute. So I'll request Doctor to respond.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any direct question, but I would rather emphasize on effective dialogue and evidence-based dialogue. To my opinion, the most important thing is to have apprenticeship guideline, apprenticeship committee, and apprenticeship secretariat, and to do quite better monitoring and evaluation. If you keep on doing monitoring and evaluation, and you have committee, guidelines, and secretariat, apprenticeship, effective apprenticeship will take place. But if you don't have those, somewhere, sometimes you get stuck. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Mr. Aggarwal. Very appreciated panel too, again. Now, I just want to follow up what Christine Hofmann, what you said about the documents and so forth. Again, just to repeat, all the documents, all the panelists, the presentations will be sent to you in a Dropbox afterwards, so you will get all the information. Now we are going to session number 9. It's the last session. It's about apprenticeship and the future of work. I want to remind you too, again, about the conference survey that's on the red table over there. If you want to grab one and just fill in your thoughts and then leave it on your table, you're welcome. And meanwhile, I invite the moderator, Maria Prieto. Welcome. Sorry. You have, I would say you have 1 hour, yes. Okay. We're running only 15 minutes late, we can afford to do that. Maria Prieto, Technical Specialist of the Future of Work, ILO. No further ado, welcome. Floor is yours, go ahead.
Great. This is very small. Thank you. Thanks. Hello. Good afternoon. So we come to the end, the future of work and apprenticeship. So I'm very happy to be here with you and with this very balanced panel. You will see that we have youth organization, we have research, we have government represented and unions. So that will give you a very good overview of the issue. Now, I wanted to start by just framing the discussion, this 1 hour discussion that I would hope is as interactive as possible with that we can do. By telling you a little bit of what the ILO is doing on the future of work and how it relates to the topic at hand, apprenticeships. So the ILO, the Director General of the ILO, launched a few years ago an initiative called the Future of Work Initiative. Because of what was going on, all the changes in technology, demographics, climate change, etc., and how these drivers influence the world of work. So he launched this initiative through consulting with all the member states, all the countries, all the tripartite constituents of the countries, asking them the question of how they saw how they saw the future of work, yeah, and sorry, okay, all right, everybody in his place. And subsequently to these national dialogues, a global commission was created. It's a commission that discussed these issues, headed by two heads of states from the North and the South, South Africa and Sweden. And they are supposed to come up with a report that will then give recommendations to its member states and to the organization on the issue of the future of work. When it comes to apprenticeships and what the discussions are around that in the future of work, it is obviously related to entry jobs into the labor market for youth and how they could evolve or be improved, as was discussed previously in the other sessions here. But also recognizing the necessity to have a lifelong approach to having an active society. And this includes lifelong learning as a major right for everybody. And how then this different programs such as apprenticeships can facilitate the transition between school and work, between paid and unpaid work, care, and other parts of the human life cycle, if you like. So issues like who pays, who for this very costly approach are very much in the discussions. Also, many developing countries have already an approach that comes close to this. How is it possible to implement this in developing countries and so forth? Those are all questions that are being discussed. Now, I would like to pass over to the panels and let me start by if you don't mind, gentlemen, to start with Zuzana. Zuzana Vaněčková, that comes from the youth organization, that is a board member of the European Apprentice Network and European Youth Forum. There is a platform that represents more than 5,500 youth organizations and includes the voices of tens of millions of young people. So very relevant for us to listen to. And Zuzana is here responsible for economic and social inclusion, advocating for social rights of young people. And she's also an activist fighting against unpaid internships and low-quality jobs and other social injustices. So, Zuzana, please.
Yes, you asked for interactivity, so maybe can I steal your mic and I can be standing up? Yeah, sure. Thank you. Because, you know, it's long days, long conference, and being at the last panel also acquired that I need to try to wake you up a little bit. So when we talk about future of work, we often talk about, for example, digitalization. We talk about the new forms of work. But I would like to a little bit focus on the other areas because I don't want to repeat what was said here so many times. So one thing which we need to change is that we won't have one career for life. I'm 24 and I changed my career 4 times already. I'm kind of extreme, but this is gonna happen to most of young people. And I was actually asked here, so how did I get the skills? And I told them, well, actually through scouting. Because in school, you don't develop the soft skills, the transversal skills. You don't develop their critical thinking, project management. But this needs to be changed. We need to make sure that these transversal skills are taught in school, and you will get them during your apprenticeships, because this will help you to enter different types of careers, and it will help you to be ready, because as was said, we need to focus on the lifelong learning, so you need to learn how to learn. So all these skills needs to be learned. I will give you a concrete example. In close to San Sebastian is one amazing vocational training center called Technica. I hope that I pronounce Technica, thank you. So, and their program is based on project learning. So they have their mentorship programs, and they learn through solving problems, and through program, they work in teams, they work on the mentor type with their teachers, and this is exactly this innovative approach which will help us in the future of work. Another amazing things which they have there is they have so much new technologies, because they're, for example, learning through virtual reality or 3D printers. And then I look, because I come from teacher's family, and my aunt, she's teaching in the vocational training school, and it's like the 50s building with the communistic amazing statues of the soldier, and they're programming with the Windows 2000. Show me a company where you will now program and code in the Windows 2000. So this is also another reason why we need to have this cooperation between also businesses, educational sectors, and also young people in general, to create this relevant environment that we will have there these new technologies. How I talk about lifelong learning, it's not only about the students, it's also about the trainers. Because I study now HR, and I had a class about psychology of work and how you can make work environment friendly for your employees. And the teacher was so excited saying, oh, I saw that in one company, they had a kitchen with a microwave. This is like so advanced. I worked in IT company at that point, and we had a conference room with the Star Wars theme. So we had the statue of Yoda there. So you can compare that the knowledge which he had from the past time when he was also in the practical world was absolutely outdated. He was not giving me the relevant information. So it's also up to the trainers to get in the lifelong learning and to get this support. So it's also important to have their mentors from the companies and also give the chance to the trainers from the school to get trained by the businesses and cooperate on this. Also, one kind of competencies which is often forgotten are the citizenship competencies. Because it's not only about democratic competencies, which are of course important. You have there also media literacy. You have there the financial literacy. And I believe that no employers want to have your employees to be a victim of social engineering. Because when you don't learn these basic competencies, you can be threat for the company through this way as well. So that's why we need to make sure that all types of competencies, including the citizenship one, are developed. And last but not least, we also need to make sure that we will get rid of all the stereotypes, especially the gender one. Also, when you look here on the panel, sorry for that, but it's not very well balanced as well. Well, when you're quoting speakers, but in general, like, I am scout leader, and my girls are now in the age where they are choosing school. And I have there one girl, she's really good in math, and she wants to go to the technical school. But her parents are making her to go to accountant, because that's the proper job for a girl, right? So we need to make sure that these stereotypes are destroyed, because even now when you look on the publications and like campaigns, you still have there the girl as a waitress and the guy with the machine. So it's also on our heads that we will make sure that with all our messaging and everything what we are doing, we are trying to get rid of all these stereotypes and everything, because the future in general is, in my opinion, about cooperation and the dialogue and the work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So I was thinking that if you have any immediate questions to Zuzana, you can go ahead. Otherwise, we will take them after. Do you have any questions for clarification, or anybody knows how any good strategy to get rid of all stereotypes? Feel free, the floor is open. No? One. Good.
Thanks, Zuzana. I thought that was really good. My name's Mark Burgess. I'm from the Australian Council of Trade Unions in Australia. One of the things we do, I come from the electrical background, and we have 2% female representation. It's a really male-dominated industry. But everything we do, all our marketing and things, we always include male and female in our strategies and that kind of stuff. So that's something that I think everybody can do to help out, is have a sort of 50% ratio there. But thanks, I enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you. Since that was not a question. Anyways, let's move on. If you like a mic, I will go to Jeff Bridgford, who is a visiting senior research fellow in the School of Education, Communication and Society in King's College in London. He also has a background in a trade union, where he was the founding director of the European Trade Union College, the education and training wing of the European Trade Union Confederation. And he also has a background in the ILO, which I'm happy to see here in the very branch that is organizing this seminar. So please, Jeff, do you want the mic, or do you're comfortable?
This one will suffice.
Okay, go on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, this is a big topic, and I've got 7.5 minutes, so I might cut a few corners, but I'd just like to at least put forward a few suggestions about the ways in which we can see the benefits of apprenticeships for the future of work. And I started off by looking at this global commission that you referred to on the future of work, and they produced an issue brief entitled Skills, Policies and Systems for a Future Workforce, which concluded with a number of questions. And what I'd like to do, very briefly, is address one of those questions, which was how do education and training systems need to be transformed to equip the workforce with the skills and competencies required for the future. My remarks will be based on a study that is nearing completion. It's called The Future of Manufacturing, Policy Developments and Practices of Apprenticeships in Selected EU Member States and Other World Regions. And it was commissioned by the European Foundation in Dublin. It concerns 5 countries in the EU, Denmark, Germany, France, Italy and Ireland, and 2 from outside the EU, Australia and the United States. And it aims to provide an analytical overview of apprenticeship in the manufacturing sector, with a specific emphasis on advanced manufacturing and high-tech industries, one of the obvious dimensions of the future of work for the manufacturing sector. Now, a word on the expression advanced manufacturing. I don't want to spend any time actually going through all the different versions of what this could be, but basically we're talking, and there's many, many versions, but basically we're talking about computer-aided design, computer-aided engineering, computer-integrated manufacturing systems. So it's that area of work that I'm looking at within this particular study. So that's my starting point, and here's a few responses to the question put by the Global Commission. Now, for the most part, systems that we've been looking at in this particular research exercise do not need to be transformed. And what I mean by that is they are already being transformed. It's not that they've been sitting there for years and years and years, and suddenly there's this notion, the future of work, and we need to start to revise what we're doing. What we've seen in all the countries, more or less, is that the political will to modernize apprenticeship training has been clearly in evidence. Even in the top of the class, let's call them that, Denmark and Germany, there are concerns about the future of apprenticeships and the fact that there are less and less apprentices, and they are involved in new strategies to be able to modernize their systems or to improve their systems. If we take France and Italy, they've introduced new laws, although I was a bit nervous when I heard Zuzana saying this morning that there was the Jobs Act, and now there's a possibility of a new version, or at least some other form of Jobs Act. And obviously as well in other countries, I'm thinking particularly of Ireland and Australia, that there have been reviews of apprenticeship training, so the political will there is there. I say in the United States too, there is an understanding in some parts of the United States that there is a potential role for apprenticeship in expanding opportunities and filling skills gaps. My only concern is that these are national strategy proposals that came up as a result of the very high youth unemployment 2008, 2009 and onwards, and I have a little bit of a sneaky feeling that I hope that it's possible to keep this issue at the top of a political agenda. And as youth employment tends to fall, I hope that the impetus within different nations will remain to want to continue to improve and modernize apprenticeship systems. So one interesting point is that we've seen with the 7 countries that they've all launched industrial policy initiatives aiming to support manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. So the answer is yes, they are thinking about this issue, but what has been really quite striking is that there's been a lot less interest in trying to link the issue of supporting manufacturing and advanced manufacturing underpinned by what could possibly be done in terms of vocational education and training. It's particularly Denmark and Germany who see vocational training as intrinsic for the success of their industrial policies, and they want to ensure that there is a link between strategic development in industrial policy and also the importance that we can see with vocational education training policies, specifically to do with apprenticeships. Now, I've got a few questions. So, have these transformations developed new occupations in the light of technological change? Now, I was expecting that there were going to be popping up all sorts of new occupations, and this hasn't been borne out by the studies that we've done. In Germany, for instance, there's only one that has popped up, and that's production technologist. In Ireland, a couple of new ones have come up. In Australia, I see that they're talking about including in the 4-year work plan for the manufacturing and engineering industrial reference committees an advanced manufacturing qualification that could possibly be brought forward. And in France, we're talking about 3 new industrial areas, but that hasn't led on necessarily to new occupations. And I think what's interesting is that most of the countries are actually saying, we've got apprenticeship systems, we've got occupations, and what we're trying to do is actually transform the occupations that we've got, or the training for the occupations that we've got, to make sure that it keeps up with technological developments. And then we've had a look at things like changes to the curricula. And there we can see whether or not there is this readiness to be able to accompany technological development within apprenticeships. And across the board, there's no doubt there's been enormous changes within the curricula of different apprenticeships in the countries that I'm talking about. And I'll give you an example taken from Ireland, where the mechanical automation and maintenance fitting apprenticeship has changed dramatically from a version that existed in 2009 and a version that was set up in 2016, where we've got digital manufacturing, we've got computer-assisted design, we've got integrated automation and control. So there's no doubt that in the off-the-job training, there is a real commitment to following technological development. But what's interesting as well, and we've heard this during the conference, that there's also a demand for other types of skills, soft skills, transversal skills. And it's interesting, for instance, I have a French example here, admittedly within a higher apprenticeship, which underlines the importance of transversal skills and competencies, working in teams, the ability to innovate, the inculcation of an entrepreneurial spirit and project management skills. And a German case, particularly within the in the metalworking industry, is talking about online communication skills, data analysis, data transfer, etc., etc. So there we see not only are we getting a deepening in terms of the type of skills that are required for this technological development, but equally we're getting a broadening out in terms of the type of skills that are required. Let's turn to the question of on-the-job training. Now, that's a bit more difficult to get a handle on, and it's not always so clear exactly what's going on in some of the enterprises. And what I'd like to do is take what I would generally say that there is obviously a move towards ensuring that young apprentices are dealing with issues which are linked to advanced manufacturing. But it does depend upon the type of company. And it does also depend upon the type of system that's in place. And what has been interesting is if you look again, and that's why I wanted to quote the Irish case, is that you look at the documentation for the off-the-job training, and it looks extremely, let's call it modern. But if you look at some of the activities that are being done on the job, and it's not quite as dynamic, as it were, in terms of technological development. And in my discussions with colleagues in Ireland, what was interesting is that they say, and I think we've got to understand this as well, is that they want to demonstrate that they're moving forward in terms of technology, but in the type of companies that they've got in many parts of Ireland, they're not necessarily actually interested so much in all the aspects of advanced manufacturing. They're interested in generally traditional stuff that they need to do within their companies. Equally, of course, they are not incapable, but they don't have the opportunities to be able to offer all the different aspects of advanced manufacturing with some of these small and medium-sized enterprises. So, can we say then that the apprenticeships have kept up with technological development? Well, I think it's difficult because obviously they're working, technological development goes ahead, apprenticeships are following on behind. And here I think there's a real concern because in some countries, and I'm thinking particularly of Germany and Denmark, we've got some relatively streamlined decision-making processes, and we've seen this as well when we're looking at things like the regulatory framework in one of the groups this afternoon. So they are relatively well equipped to be able to take on these new ideas and to put them all the way through the system. I have some figures here from the metal industry in Germany, where it's possible to take some of these decisions in about 6 months. Equally, in Denmark, within the trade committees, where they have the social partners, that is to say, employers and also trade union organizations, they have to report annually the type of changes that they want to make. So they're keeping up to date year after year after year. Now, I did mention before that in Ireland they had a 2009 version and a 2016 version of one of the apprenticeships. I'm not at all suggesting that it took them 7 years to update their apprenticeship, but they weren't doing it non-stop. In fact, they did it towards the end of the next period that they wanted to start a new apprenticeship. But the point is, it is time-consuming, it does take a long time, and the examples that we've got from France and from Italy demonstrate that some of these apprenticeship qualifications can take easily 2 years to update. And then I don't like to say this because I'm a big fan, as many of you know, of apprenticeship systems, but we might be in a situation in some countries where by the time that apprentices have actually got to the end of their apprenticeship, they are actually training to do things on equipment that doesn't any longer exist. And so we've got a real concern, I think, within apprenticeship systems to ensure that we can speed up the decision-making processes. So, in conclusion, what I'd like to say is that in all the countries, perhaps with the exception of the United States, we've been witnessing what I like to refer to as a golden age of interest in apprenticeship training strategy. We are, it seems, entering another golden age, and that's of the implementation of apprenticeship training strategy, particularly within this context of technological development. Will these transformations be carried out successfully enough so that it'll be possible to respond to the Global Commission on the Future of Work and say, yes, the workforce in these countries is equipped with the skills and competencies required for the future, in the manufacturing sector at least? The answer is we don't know yet, and I'm sure that there will be some successes and perhaps some moments of less success. But I think one thing that I'd like you to take away from this particular presentation is that it is clear to me is that those people who are developing industrial policy initiatives need to ensure that there is also a vocational training aspect of these particular initiatives to ensure that the industry policy initiatives actually are a success themselves. And on that point, I'd like to stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So do you have any questions or suggestions? Or yes.
Mr. Bridgford mentioned the changes and developments, and especially he referred to the changes in curriculum. During the past 3 decades, there has been a shift from instructionism to constructionism. What has not been discussed since yesterday is this change and move. And I'm asking him whether purposely he did not mention that or it was forgotten, please.
Yes, I didn't. And one of the reasons because I haven't studied that part of the the training programs. I think it'd be very interesting. There is a whole aspect, and this could require some very interesting research as well, is the change in training methods as a result of technological development. Now, I haven't studied that. I'd like to, if you're offering, and it would be very interesting to see the ways in all the new aspects of technological development that exist, the extent to which they're actually permeating into the vocational training systems. I have a feeling that if you take some of the really top companies who are at the very forefront of technological development, I'm sure that's the case. But I know for a fact that in many countries, in small and medium-sized enterprises, that's probably not very high on the agenda. And the other point, and you mentioned this as well, is that it's very obvious that in some countries, in the off-the-job training, they have remarkable equipment and also are possibly just as remarkable in terms of their pedagogical methods. But I can be pretty certain that in many vocational training institutions, this is not necessarily the case. The equipment is not as advanced as it should be. And I must say that the skills and awareness of some of the teachers and trainers working within vocational institutions is really not up to the same speed as it might be within the companies for whom they are preparing the apprentices.
Thank you. We had another question there in the corner.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So, Helen Hofmann from the European Commission. The study Jeff mentioned, it's a very important one for us because it was actually proposed by the European Parliament, and there's a very high political interest in the outcomes. And perhaps one comment Jeff mentioned that certainly some companies are struggling to keep up with the rapid technological changes, and that's absolutely right. We learned, 2 weeks ago at a conference in Italy, which we organized with the European Alliance for Apprenticeships and NL, which is an EAFA company award winner from last year. So we learned there in their technical training center that a huge challenge is also for the vet school or schools to keep up with the technical developments in the company. So that's also a very important bridge to make, and one of the important measures introduced there by the training center of NL is to have more structured cooperation with the in-company trainer and also the teachers in vet schools. Now, I know although this is something we often talk about and it should already be standard, we could see that it's something where they're really making very concrete efforts, and it's very important, I think, for the transfer of innovation between the company and keeping up the skills up to date of the teachers and trainers. So that's just one aspect I wanted to mention, and perhaps another one that came up in these discussions in Italy is the question of how companies can invest in all the infrastructure that they need for the training. So, for example, using virtual and augmented reality technologies, be it for welding or other processes, so that apprentices are able to learn during their apprenticeship certain tasks. And I think this is another important question. In the case of NL, they were able to cover these costs themselves, and it pays off for having highly qualified staff, future staff. But again, because Jeff mentioned SMEs a lot, I think other types of companies may need different incentives, financial or non-financial, to be able to implement such measures.
Thank you for that input. Do you want to address this, or you're fine with...
Well, it wasn't a question, really, but all I can say, yes, I think all those are very important points, but I think it's particularly interesting that you chose the example of NL, because certainly amongst Italian companies, it is remarkably forward-looking in terms of apprenticeship policy, and obviously, as you mentioned yourself, they have a lot of money. So it's clear that they're they're in a very strong position, if you like, in terms of the market. So they've got all the attributes, in a sense, to be able to move forward with these elements, whether that be in hardware or indeed software. But as I said, and as you said as well, not everyone is in that particular position. But the interesting thing is, how then can we possibly incentivize, and I don't have the answer to this, how can we possibly incentivize those that are not able to keep up on their, with these developments on the basis of their own funding? That's an interesting policy issue, and I fear that probably nothing will be done about that. But that's not because I'm necessarily naturally pessimistic, but it's a complicated issue.
Thank you. All right, so just to keep up with time, let's move on to the next speaker, Rafael Lerena from my part of the world. He is the coordinator of employment in the Ministry of Labor in Argentina, technical delegate of World Skills International, and advisor on skills development to the Argentinian presidency of the G20. Rafael, please.
Good afternoon to everyone. I would like to start for saying thanks to the ILO for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to speak in front of such an audience from many countries. And I'm here to tell you the latest news about the work that we are doing in the G20 this year under Argentinian presidency. So I would like to start to make the formal state at saying that the G20, as I said, under Argentinian presidency, considers that the apprenticeship training system is one of the most effective ways of delivering skills, integrated with digital skills, soft skills, entrepreneur, and other kind of hard skills also. Without doubt, it's going to have a key role in the building of the future of work. Okay, and it's not the first time that that's it. That the G20 expressed about the apprenticeship system. It has been many times, many backgrounds. In the year 2012, the group members identified the key elements of the quality apprenticeship. The following year, they agreed the implementation of the apprenticeship elements, and since then, year to year, they agreed in the expansion, promotion, and strengthening of a quality apprenticeship system, even becoming a high priority in the year 2016 under China presidency. And well, this is not new, but just to give you the conclusions and the statement that the G20 is having, the world of work is undergoing deep and fast changes, and with some mega trends, the digital transformation, globalization, demographic change, and as another kind of trends that are making a profound impact on the future of work. They're changing the composition by creating throughout creation and destruction of occupations, but also changing, as it was said, changing the nature of the employment of some occupations. And of course, therefore, we need to build new approaches to lifelong learning, and we need a massive transformation of the education and training systems. Apprenticeship could be an historical tool, but taken from a new approach by, let's say, having innovation and original point of view in the pedagogical methods. We are certain that we could make a real change by the demanding of new skills. So now I'm going to tell you just briefly what we are doing in the employment working group. We are doing an identification of skill trends, also studies of mismatched skill and skill anticipation. And we are doing it, we are facing these challenges with a whole approach government, with a whole government approach. We consider that challenges of that size, the huge challenges require a whole government approach, not just one view or only one ministry working, trying to solve the problems. Instead, we are in this employment working group based in the social dialogue and in the institutional coordination, working jointly with the educational ministry and the labor ministries. Part of the same philosophy of building these bridges between the world of education and the world of work is the multi-stakeholder approach, with the staying in the social dialogue by working together in the B20 and the L20, and also with the participation of the C20 and the Youth 20. And finally, I want to tell you one of the main points or the main discussion that we are having on the employment working group, that is to focus the apprenticeship system as a transition from school to work. We think that it could be a key public policy that gives opportunity to the youth unemployment, that we have to recognize that it has to be a quality apprenticeship that is a key factor, not any apprenticeship, that requires a robust legal framework. It's really important not to turn in the danger of turning this in cheap work instead of what we all want, that is decent jobs. So we need a robust legal framework. We also need, and that is one of the key things why this is a really strong policy. We need to part from the demands of skills, from the demand of the labor market. It's really important that the apprenticeship topics has to be relevant to the labor market. Also, a very strong decision that the G20 take is the inclusiveness. The important to have systems that leave no one behind, and to really give opportunities to the first job, the first step in the labor market, addressing the skill mismatch, leaving no one behind, and really giving the upskill to that youth employment. Because we need to tackle this paradox, the youth paradox, that the employers think that they can't hire the youth because of the lack of experience. But that turns in a difficult circle, in a dangerous circle, because therefore the youth can't earn the experience. So it's very important to have this program, this kind of program, as a transition in the moment from school to work, so to give the possibility to earn while learning, and to be more, to tackle the youth unemployment, and to have an opportunity for those youth to have a decent job. So the G20 considers that being a quality as in conjunction with the vocational training, this is really a tool, a strong tool to give a step to tackle the inequality and to work for inclusive growth.
Great. Thanks so much for that presentation. Any comments or questions from the floor and from the panel? No? Okay, then. Let's... okay. Okay, then last but absolutely not least, that would be Kevin Rowan, that is Head of Organization, Services and Skills of the Trade Union Congress and the Director of Unionlearn. He leads here in the TUC skills, public services, trade union renewals, health and well-being, regional policy, and trade union education. So a lot of things. So well done. And before, he was the regional secretary of the Northern TUC. And he's also a member of the Council of City and Guilds. I am surprised to see the guilds, but maybe you can. And non-executive director of the Health and Safety Executive, a council member of Ruskin College, Oxford, and a visiting fellow of Northumbria University. So he has a very full plate. Please.
Thank you very much, Maria. I didn't realise my introduction would be as long as my speech, but thank you very much for the for those kind words, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I'll take a leaf out of Zuzana's book and try and be as punchy as I can to reward you for your resilience in sticking with the conference for this long. I want to talk really about the role of apprenticeships as routes into work, addressing the kind of challenges of the future of work. And you heard this morning a very eloquent presentation from Sian Cook, a very excellent exposition of the government's apprentice reforms and the ambitions within there. And I think I want to offer, not surprisingly to Sian, I guess, a slightly more cautionary tale of what's the difference between the ambitions of the government, which we very much support as a trade union movement and very much want to work well, and the experience of workers and employers on the ground, and try to explain why some of the challenges of that experience make apprenticeships as a route into work and the future of work difficult if those challenges aren't addressed. I think the first point I want to make really is there is quite a significant gap between the government's welcome ambition of increasing the scale of apprenticeship starts, 3 million by the end of 2020, and the current trend in apprenticeship starts in the UK. Rather than see the number of apprenticeship places increasing, we've actually witnessed the most significant decline in apprenticeship starts for a generation, if you look at the last 2 years alone. Now, it is the case that employers were generally opposed to the apprentice levy, so perhaps we shouldn't be too surprised by that. But the latest reports show a decline between the last academic year, 2017-18, and the previous academic year, 2016-17, of 28%. Now that's a significant fall, and in numbers terms, that means there are round about 100,000 less apprentice places in the current year than there were in the previous year, and even less if you look over longer term. The second challenge, really, in terms of that performance, is that employers are really struggling within the system to be able to draw down the resource that they're contributing. As Sian was explaining, employers pay a levy on their payroll, which has brought into the government round about £2.5 billion of extra revenue. But so far, according to the government's own statistics, they've only been able to draw down around 10% of that money to spend on apprenticeships. So my first point is that we've seen a quite seriously regrettable decline in apprenticeships because of a policy or because of the some of the administrative processes around the policy that was designed to boost apprenticeship numbers, which is a real concern across the economy. The second point I'd like to make is that the levy hasn't done anywhere near enough to improve the quality of apprenticeships. There is some evidence that some employers are more inclined towards investing in higher level skills apprenticeships as a result of the investment that they now have to make, recognising the increased value to their businesses. And we've had some conversations today around the value to enterprises. But there's also some evidence that some employers who have not previously offered apprenticeships programmes are, for the first time, taking apprentices on. Now, on the one hand, that's great. The more employers are offering apprenticeships is good. But unfortunately, some of those employers simply do not have the internal management structures, systems and processes to ensure that those apprentices get a good quality apprenticeship system, apprenticeship experiences. And those apprentices are perhaps not, should perhaps not qualify to be called apprenticeships given the government's own regulatory framework there, and perhaps should be called prolonged work experience or traineeships. And the government's own survey showed that around 1 in 5 apprentices didn't even realise that they were doing an apprenticeship. And our own research in the TUC has shown that 1 in 4 apprentices are currently paid below the national minimum rate for apprentice pay, which is £3.75 an hour. I don't know what that translates to in Swiss francs or euros, but it's not much money, and apprentices are getting paid even less than that in many cases. And that takes me to my third point, and that is that the regulatory system around the current apprentices regime isn't doing enough to ensure that the standards that we all value and appreciate and support are being met by either employers or training providers. Apprenticeship training is regulated by Ofsted, the government's education and training regulator, but they don't regulate employers, and there is very little impact from an Ofsted inspection on the actual experience of apprentices in the system. A regulatory system which strongly encourages employers to take apprentices on, and we welcome that through the levy, but which then fails to effectively regulate the conditions and experiences of those apprentices, demonstrably risks exposing those apprentices to a very poor start in their working life. My fourth point is that in these remarks is that the failure of this policy initiative to challenge the lack of diversity and equality in apprenticeships, which I think Zuzana spoke to as well, and I would endorse the comments that she made. There are examples, I think, of some good sectors where some progress is being made in transport and construction and engineering, where employers and trade unions are working very well to tackle the very stark occupational segregation in those industries. But in all of those industries, we're going from a situation where less than 3% of apprentice intakes are female. Even smaller percentages are from ethnic minority communities. So we're starting from a very low base and making very slow progress. But across the economy, there is very little evidence to show that those equality and diversity challenges are being met. And the key concern here is that if we're seeing the number of apprentices overall decline, and we are, from 360,000 apprentice starts in August 2016 to March 2017 to just over 260,000 in the most recent year, then there is inevitably less opportunity for employers to tackle those diversity challenges and making it much harder to kind of enable apprentices from underserved communities and underrepresented groups to secure apprentices. My final observation is that all of these challenges are happening in a landscape where the employment rights in the UK, not unlike other parts of the world, are diminishing significantly. Many more workers enduring precarious work, whether that's 0 hours contracts, bogus self-employment, or working on platform-based gig economy occupations, making it even less likely that those workers are going to be able to kind of tackle any kind of skills progression, let alone access to apprenticeships. So my conclusion from those rather stark observations is that the real risk that we're running if we don't address some of the flaws in the delivery of the apprentice reforms in the UK is that we end up with an incredibly polarised set of opportunities for entering the labour market. A very small number, relatively, of high-quality apprenticeships, which are occupied in large part by already well-educated white young men, and at the other end of the spectrum, a large volume of very poor quality experiences, very poor quality apprentices for low-skilled workers, certainly not getting the training and development needed to participate in the future of work and the demands of the future economy, let alone meet any kind of ongoing training needs. We are, like many employers, like all political parties, and certainly like the government, ambitious for our apprentice system and keen to ensure that the apprentice reforms deliver the outcomes that we need. But unless we tackle some of the rigidities in the system, unless we provide a system which works for employers as well as for individuals, we will run serious risk of actually delivering the opposite set of outcomes that the apprentice reforms are designed to address. And we will continue, of course, to work with government and talk to government about how we can help to support those outcomes. Thank you.
So, any questions to Kevin? Yes, very in the back, back.
Hi, Kevin. I was just wondering, you've mentioned levies. Are there any incentives as well that go along with those levies for employers to take on apprentices, or is it just the levies that to fund the training?
You can answer straight.
Answer straight away. Yeah. Well, I think the incentives for employers is that they get a better skilled workforce. You know, we shouldn't need to be, working too hard to persuade employers to take on apprentices. I don't think there are any financial inducements. Shan will know more about that than I do, so she may wish to come in. For very small enterprises, that they aren't paying the levy. So if you've got a payroll of less than £3 million, then you don't pay the levy, and you can kind of benefit, I guess, in that regard. And there is some flexibilities in the current system so that large employers can transfer some of their money to smaller companies to support them taking apprentices on, although we'd argue for more flexibility in that aspect of the system.
We have Paul here.
Yeah, thanks. I had a question to Kevin as well about the potential of the intermediary organisations in the UK, the group training type arrangements to address the sort of changing employment patterns in, with the gig economy and the platform economy. And because it was mentioned yesterday as a possible, response to changing employment relationships because the employer effectively becomes the group employer or the intermediary organisation that then farms out the apprentice or places the apprentice in different workplaces. Is there any evidence in the UK of those patterns emerging for sort of the newer occupations?
Thanks, Paul. I mean, certainly that there are examples, good practice of group training organisations. I'm not sure that they're necessarily forming in the sectors of the economy where we're seeing very precarious employment patterns in that regard. So, the kind of Deliveroo, Uber, Hermes type occupations, we're not seeing group training agencies or organisations responding to the apprenticeship challenge in those sectors. In fact, we're seeing very, very little happening in apprenticeships at all. But where we are seeing some good practice is in organisations where necessarily in their sector in some regards they find it difficult to plan long term. So, for instance, in the construction sector, where particularly small companies will not necessarily have a long pipeline of work. Balfour Beatty, interestingly, are leading a network of employers in the construction sector to lead a group training apprenticeship arrangements in there. So there is definitely good practice there, which we're very supportive of. I think the part of the challenge, and in some ways the setting the standards process, which Shan spoke about this morning, helps with that, is making sure that there is a degree of synchronicity of the skills demand between companies. An example where we need to make some improvements, for example, would be in train upholstery companies, for example, where we've got in the West Midlands 3 or 4 train upholstery companies where it's very difficult for anybody to transfer between them because they all have individual skills requirements, even though when you strip it back, the apprentices are doing exactly the same tasks. So we need to help companies break down some of those unnecessary barriers between the kind of skills needs across the sectors, across companies.
Thanks. We had another question here.
So thank you very much for the panelists, and thank you for the ILO. I've also been attending the Future of Work conference last year. I had an interrogation. workplace is also changing. So we're shifting from traditional workplace to digital workplace. I was wondering how ILO is partnering with other international organizations. Just on the other way of the Place des Nations, there is the ITU. The ITU is working very hard to understand the shift from traditional workplace to digital workplace. I haven't seen anyone from ITU in the program. Just wondering how you are handling this to address this challenge. So the definition the ITU gives of the digital workplace is holistic set of platforms, ecosystems, tools, and environments for work, which are being delivered by different channels at different touch points for a coherent and productive way of working. So my question is really to address this shift, and also in terms of shift from apprenticeship in traditional way of working with a desk, because everybody is now mobile. How are you partnering as ILO with the ITU and also other professional organizations, international ones like the ACM, Association of Computer Machinery? I represent the SIG-CHI, Special Interest Group on Computer Human Interaction, and it's an international network. There's also the IFIP, there's IEEE. So where are these people standing and how do you collaborate with them? Thank you.
Okay, yes, indeed, the ILO is not alone, obviously, in this work. I think every organization is working on it. I mean, UN organization, private organizations, foundations, etc. So under the framework of the Future of Work initiative, if you like, and also in connection to what the Global Commission is working on, we're establishing links, collaborations of research, sort of brainstorming around issues that we need further information on. And I believe that ITU is one of the organizations that the Youth Employment Global Initiative is very much working on these issues with, for example. That's more an ILO initiative. I mean, not only Future of Work, but also the health organization across the road, talking to them about how health is affecting people and the technological changes are affecting the World Bank, the IMF. It just never ends. I mean, but obviously, the ILO looked at. I mean, the objective of the ILO is to look at how can we continue to work towards a social justice for all. That is the mandate, if you like, of the ILO. And then, obviously, in connection. Yes, please.
Just to supplement what you said, with ITU, we have a very good collaboration on the digital skills. The ILO, the UN Youth Employment Initiative, there is a pillar of the 7 pillars. There is a digital skills pillar, and it is led by ITU. Both from the employment department, several initiatives. We strongly support and work with ITU. Thank you.
Great. I think there is a final question there in the back. Yes, you.
Sorry, it's Sian Cook here. I'm from the Department for Education in England, and I feel it's my responsibility to thank Kevin for his comments. We work really, really closely with trade unions, and it's really important to us to hear feedback about how members of the public, how employers, how apprentices, how everybody is finding what is undoubtedly a massive reform programme. It's a huge change. And his comments about starts, I acknowledge. Starts have fallen. We've introduced a massive challenge to employers to recruit people in a way that they haven't done so before, and to think about upskilling their workforce in ways that is new for many, many companies. I think I started my presentation this morning talking about quality, and that is really at the heart of these reforms. So it's important for us as government to protect the quality of apprenticeships as we're trying to drive up volumes, and I hope that he would agree with me that what we are doing is with a real ambition to transform the way that apprenticeships are delivered, and that will deliver long-term benefits for employers that he works for. Last year's survey said that 78% of employers reported that they thought their productivity had been increased by having apprentices working with them. And I think that's a really, really positive reflection of the energy and the drive that new people can bring to working in different occupations. And that's why we're all here, because we all care about that. We are in this for the long run, and it's really important to hear that feedback. So he made a number of other comments, which I'm very happy to pick up offline. And I know Anne Milton, who is the Skills Minister, is coming to speak with the TUC, I think, next week. So I'm sure that she'll be happy to pick those things up with you individually. But thank you very much for your comments. We hope to see the starts recover. And we are throwing everything we can at delivering those 3 million quality apprenticeships by 2020, but quality comes first and foremost for us. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. By that, I think we've had a very good discussion, and let me just end by saying that one thing that seems to be the red thread is that for the future, apprenticeships hold a huge potential that needs to be tweaked and updated, and stereotypes need to be addressed, but this is something that should continue in discussions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Prieto, and thank you very much for the last panelists. Now we have come to an end after 2 very interesting days filled with very, very fascinating and interesting information. I want to remind you one thing before we have the closing remarks, and that is your magnetic card or badge that I encourage you when you go out, you exit, you put your badge in the box. It's just outside the exit. So I remind you about that. And then for the closing remarks, I invite Sang-Yeon Lee, please, Director Employment Policy Department, ILO. We're going to have representatives from government, employers, and workers. And this is going to be the closing remarks. And thank you, all of you, for being here these 2 days. It's been excellent. Thank you so much. The floor is yours, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. I know you must be tired, so we're trying to move to the closing session very quickly. We have the very productive and constructive and very lively the discussions for the last 2 days. And so we just have a bit of quick moments to, a bit of stock take what we have discussed and what is our overall take-home messages. And at the same time, we can start to think about what will be the next step. So with that overall perspective, I have the 3 actually speakers here. First, I'm going to probably ask Jennifer speak first, and then I'm going to ask Rafael to speak, and then last but not least, I'm going to ask the Muralani to speak. Then at the end of the session, I'm going to have the quick the remark to make to wrap up what we have discussed, and then sharing our perspective on the issues, and also a bit of a couple of step forward from the ILO perspective. So, with that, a short introduction, can I invite Jennifer to speak first? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And one of the challenges of this type of international conference is that we're all at different stages of this journey in an apprenticeship's case. And the Director General opened the event by talking about a remarkable renaissance of interest. And about an hour ago, we heard about a golden age. I mean, those of us in different stages of the journey, and we heard the Swiss sort of say that they sort of didn't feel that they were in revival mode. They were already maintaining the momentum. For us, our revival happened about 20 years ago in Australia, where we really saw a resurgence in interest in apprenticeships, but have spent the last 6 years running the systems down. In 2012, we had almost 500,000 apprentices in training, apprentices and trainees, which is about 4% of the workforce. We now have half that many apprentices and trainees in training due to policy and funding changes. But despite these differences in our journeys, for those of us who have attended this conference, we are here because we have something really strong and valuable to share. And that is that we believe fundamentally in the power and the benefits of the apprenticeship system. Acquiring skills in a structured way through structured quality training, combined with invaluable work experience and underpinned by an employment contract, is the very essence of what we're all here in this conference believing in, is the power and the benefits of apprenticeships. So with that context of what is shared versus what is different about our systems, let me sort of reinforce 5 key things that I felt are takeaways from my point of view. Firstly, there were quite a few speakers who continued to emphasise the dual role of apprenticeships in not just as skills development, which is its fundamental role, but also as the avenue for young people and people transitioning from careers and other disadvantaged groups to obtain a job with all those benefits that I just mentioned about an apprenticeship. The second key thing is all apprenticeship routes matter, was a comment we heard yesterday. Not just STEM, not just those that the government thinks are the priority industries for the future, but the really important thing about apprenticeships is it is a job. It's not training for training's sake. It's not trying to work out where your priorities of training, cost and investment should be. It is a job. So the industry, the employers, the community is already telling you by offering that job that that is a priority. So all routes for apprenticeships matter, not just someone else's assessment of what the priorities are. The third key element is that collaboration, including in the context of the ILO, the social partners, partnerships between government and industry, partnerships between social organisations, we all need to work together to promote apprenticeships as a fantastic career option. The importance of promotion, those countries that still have stigmas attached to apprenticeships versus higher education, that was also a key theme of what we've heard in the last couple of days. The fourth key outcome from me is that we need a better structure for careers advice. So the two are linked. We need to really improve the information that is given to people seeking and wanting to see how they can inform their job choices. So the career advice and the information that's available is fundamentally important. And fifthly, we heard today from the group that was looking at the promotional side that fundamentally their goal, and I think this is something we should all take away, is we need to continue to build confidence in the system. So it's about confidence in apprenticeships that comes from quality, that comes from promotion, that comes from partners working together and all singing from the same song sheet. And that is the way that we can build confidence in the system. The system needs to work for small businesses as well as large businesses. In fact, one of the issues in the context of the future of work, which was the final point, was that, one point to raise, is that when we think about the future of work, you think about large companies are really, automating much more highly than a small service-based business. And the growth in employment is inevitably going to come more in the small business part of the economy due to the way the future of work is shaping. So apprenticeships must work for small to medium-sized businesses, not just large businesses. Finally, I'd just like to, on those 5 reflections, thank the ILO for allowing us the opportunity to have this important discussion, not just because of the importance of the topic, which is profoundly important, but also because these types of international engagements continue to help social partners and countries to work together, to share ideas and understanding, and that can only be good for the future of the globe. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jennifer. Actually, you captured I think, probably most of the major point on the issues we discussed for last today. So now, can I turn to Rafael? I really hope the G20 will carry this agenda forward at this 20 minutes.
Perfect. I will try not to bore you because I have just spoken. For me, this apprenticeship system is an opportunity. Of course, for youth, for the vulnerable youth, for the low-income youth, and for all youth. The opportunity to upskill, to have the first step to earn and learn, and to have the real opportunity to have quality jobs, better jobs, decent jobs. But it's also an opportunity for all us. I'll tell you briefly a short experience in my country. We are constantly working to make some improvements to the legal framework of apprenticeship. And that was an opportunity for a meaningful, real social dialogue. This is a tool that enables the possibility to sit in the same table, the employers, the workers, and the government. And here I need to underline that the government in this kind of tool is a facilitator, not a driver. So this is also an opportunity for us to build bridges, to have a strong social dialogue as the ILO recommends, and to give more opportunities to the youth. For sure, without doubt, the G20 consider that it's important to expand the apprenticeship system, but not also to expand, also to bring quality and to diversify, to give a diversification in different sectors and different occupations. So I really think that this is a powerful tool, and I'm going to take all the enrichful discussions that we have here to the G20 this year, the Argentinian presidency, and I'm going to inform you that we are going to have the next meeting September this year, a multi-stakeholder meeting between the C20, the Youth 20, and also the Business and Labor 20, in which they are going to come to Argentina many ministries. And for sure, apprenticeship is going to be in that agenda as one of the strong, powerful public policies to reduce the inequality and to have more development and more growth with inclusiveness. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Rafael. So we really look forward to the joint the ministerial meetings in September. So we are very much hopeful there will be some significant progress on the issue of the apprenticeship. Now, can I invite the Bahari Mafikeli? I'm sorry.
I have a very good, I think, voice. I'm sure the comrades at the back can hear me. So the first thing is a proper diagnostic of the situation. So any apprenticeship program must be based on a proper diagnostic. And as many of us are saying, no one size fits all. And here's our diagnostic situation. And a clearer understanding of that particular situation leads into a better problem. A clear understanding of the challenges, as explained here, maybe not many challenges you can identify with, but one of the key challenges in our case is government departments with their multiple messaging, which leads to bureaucratization. And one of the things we need to take out is an issue of bureaucratization, which came out clear also in many of the presentations. But also the insurance of the poor, address of the redress and access issues. So also the proper understanding of the challenges. We must, in our case, speak about our strengths. And one of the things that is not coming out clear with all that has been said is the assurance that there's a proper monitoring and evaluation system in any apprenticeship program. Because any apprenticeship program that doesn't continue to renew itself is just bound to crash. So, and in our case, we've got a proper monitoring and evaluation system. It's not the best, but it's something that you need in a particular system. And coming from a trade union background, always take care of our demands. And one of the things we're raising is we are churning out 30,000 learners. We've got a huge problem of, say, about 300,000 we need to reach out. And our employers and our government sometimes don't understand and we don't agree. But one of the issues we raise in our demands is the issue of levy increase. And the funny part, it's evidenced by employer spend. Employers tell us all the time, we spend 5%, 4% and more. And when we say increase the levy, there's sometimes is an issue. But we know that government is sometimes influenced by the austerity thinking, that they need to save and save and save and have all of the fiscal discipline. And what are the benefits? And just to take you through one, as a trade unionist coming from an organization like COSATU, we don't use the word return on investment, so we've had a particular word, we call it ROTI, Indian derived, but we're meaning return of training investment. So one of the things that we need to look at as a benefit, a huge benefit, if all the stakeholders, capital, which is business, government and labor, all see a return on investment, I mean, in different forms, you always are going to have high levels of benefit. But also the address of the problems, the macroeconomic problems that are bedeviling our society. And one of the slogans we use, third from the bottom, from sweeper to engineer to legislator. And we sometimes have got living examples of those. One of the former premiers of the most industrialized province, Sam Shiloh, started off as a guard in the transport industry, to a general secretary of our union, to a premier, and he defected from the ruling party into another party. But you still can see a proper flow and coming through an artisanship program. And there are many examples. And as and when we can show those particular examples, then we can show that we've got living programs in terms of artisanship programs. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much. So actually, it's quick and sweet, but get to the point. I appreciate that. From our perspective, this is almost the end of conference. Actually, we always find ourselves in a bit of a challenging situation. We normally consider this kind of conference as concluding our work, presenting our work, and have a discussion, and that's the end of the story. But most of the time, including this particular conference, we actually end up with more work to do than before. So that is the success, or at the same time, that's actually indicating how much work will be done in the future. I think I'm pretty much echoing what you all have already said. I think the starting point, and also one of the strong agreement in this conference, is that there is indeed the growing interest in apprenticeship. So there are lots of the policy attention to that, and also there are lots of the efforts to modernize and innovate the system. But at the same time, despite of this actually strong interest in the apprenticeship, the reality is not necessarily moving fast as one may expect from this actually, for example, political commitment. In that respect, I think the ILO actually, together with all of you, I think do lots of work to do here. One is that we keep talking about apprenticeship, but still I can see some different definition, a different understanding of the apprenticeship itself. Of course, I mean, that's inevitable, and ILO produced actually ILO toolkits to explain what they are, but still in reality, there is just some huge variation in our understanding and our approach to the apprenticeship. So that does not mean there is nothing in common either. So I think what needs to be done is that the ILO, probably with all of your support, trying to develop some common understanding of the apprenticeship. And also ideally, from this actually very fruitful and the constructive discussion, we can probably develop some kind of common principles which somehow guide actually whatever apprenticeship system we are going to introduce in your respective countries. And also in that respect, I think the issue of the implementation and contextualizing and customization, I mean, these are very important elements we have to take into account. So to make this happen, I think especially from our side, there are two things to be done, at least as a starting point. First one is there was lots of discussion about the stigma, the culture and mindset and et cetera, which basically indicating despite all this interest in the apprenticeship, actual take-up rate by workers and the companies may not very high at the moment. So that we can attribute that to simply the cultural differences and mindset, etc. But there are, as actually our South African colleague actually mentioned, there are some fundamental issues about we have to demonstrate economic benefit of apprenticeship. With that, we can convince both workers and employers actually to see the value of apprenticeship. So I think for that, we need some very solid, without economic analysis about what are the benefit and the cost of apprenticeship. And also, apprenticeship requires a social partnership, that's true, but also that requires very serious work to the cost sharing as well. So probably once we have some solid analysis about these issues, we'll be in a better place to convince our companies and the workers to accept the apprenticeship and also come up with what is the best way of financing the apprenticeship as well through the equitable cost sharing. Another element probably we are going to do, we're already doing that, actually we need a bit of the stock taking of the policy initiative in different parts of the world. G20 report we presented today is just the beginning of our long process of the global stock taking of the policies. So starting from the G20 country, we move beyond G20s to look into other countries, especially Asia and Africa and Latin America, and also Central Asia and Eastern Europe as well, to see exactly what kind of policy development were there, and what are the commonality, what are the difference, where is the success factors actually in there. So this is kind of the stock-taking exercise, which somehow show what works, what doesn't work, etc. That is an important exercise. So this is our commitment to actually carry forward our work and to look into all the policy issues in the countries beyond the G20. And at the same time, it is our commitments to actually move on to our ILO toolkit on the apprenticeship, number 2. Which actually reflects some of most of the very actually excited and very constructive discussion we have today. And in terms of looking forward, in terms of issues, I mean, it's related to future work. I think there are lots of things actually we need to work together, not just ILO, because we are also looking at the issues about we can certainly benefit tremendously from your insight and support as well. The first, as far as I can see, how we can actually kind of find ways of the apprenticeship embrace new technologies. And we talk about the digital skills, that's okay, but we're also talking about soft skills, you're talking about cognitive skills, and et cetera, et cetera. So how can we embrace these new types of technology within the framework of the apprenticeship will be a big issue. That is related to the very important question actually Jennifer raised, is that right now, even this actually G20 report clearly indicating the apprenticeship is interesting, have lots of potential, but very much limited to certain occupation and manufacturing and construction, etc. But what we know is that the source of the future job creation will be mainly in the service sector. So how can we somehow apply this actually the apprenticeship system in the rather unconventional area, unknown territory for the apprenticeship, and make sure the people in this occupation have opportunity. And in doing so, of course, SMEs will be important. The important aspect we have to look into. The second issue, lifelong learning. I think our UNESCO colleague, he left already, but he already pointed to that it's an important question. This is very important for us, actually. In the context of the Future Work Centennial Initiative, we consider the lifelong learning is a very, very critical step forward, but we also want to understand what is the way of the articulated the TVS system, apprenticeship, or different types of apprenticeship system within the new framework of the lifelong learning. This is certainly a big task for us. Actually, we very much count on your wisdom on that. And finally, I just want to share some information with you. This conference is very, very important to the ILO debate on the apprenticeship itself. We have relatively high chance that the international level conference will discuss the apprenticeship issues in the coming years, with a view to the potentially have some new standard setting on the apprenticeship. As you know, ILO doesn't have any standard at the moment, either conventional recommendation on the topic. That actually creates a bit of the what we call regulatory gaps at the moment. So, but at the same time, this is not actually kind of the exercise of the filling the gap, but it should be done within the overall context of the future work and lifelong learning, etc. So we have quite a daunting task to look into that issues in quite a new circumstances. So in there, again, I very much hope to have your actually support and your suggestions and also the recommendation on these topics as well. So that's, I think, our take-home message. I spoke to my colleague, Srinivas, briefly, so I think I got actually his support on this. So in conclusion, I want to thank all the participants. It has been very long 2 days, but I really appreciate your engagement and commitment. And also I want to thank again the partners, JP Morgan Chase, and also especially countries like Norway and Sweden and Australia and many, Korea and many other countries. And also I want to thank again, and also OECD, it's here apparently, for actually organizing this event jointly. And finally, and it's important to me, and I want to thank our team led by the Srinivas Reddy for organizing this excellent conference. As far as I can see, I normally coming to office early in the morning. I try to leave a bit late, but every time they're working, so which means the Srinivas team has been working day and night. So, but we don't have any overtime compensation, so that is my regret, but we'll find a way of compensating for that. And of course, our team is sitting over there, so for you already see all of them. I want to thank them as well. So, this is going to be a bit of our personal touch. We have, I'm pretty sure many of you know the Kaju is sitting just behind. Today is his last day at the ILO. No, don't be worried about it. He's not leaving the ILO. He's actually moving to the Jakarta office. So, but this is his the last day. Actually, he kindly agreed to stay on until the end of conference, out of his commitment and responsibility. So, for that, I want to give a special thanks for his commitment, his work. So thank you very much again. So this is the end of the conference. Those who actually need to travel far away, I wish you the safe journey back, and also have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.